April 23rd of 1995 marked the second time Nintendo dabbled into the realm of console expansions. This date marks the release of what would be the fruits of their labor with ambient radio company St. GIGA, the Satellaview. While at the time this Super Famicom add-on was extremely rare to find in households, and could thereby be perceived as unpopular, over the years with the advent of the internet and chat rooms for people around the world, the Satellaview has had a sort of pseudo-revival. It's gained a loyal fanbase who aims to archive everything they can about the system, given its shutdown in mid-2000. Before we get there, we need to go back to 1993. Star Fox was released, Pablo Escobar was killed, and Nintendo had failed to get a CD add-on for the SNES out of both Sony and Philips. The former would turn their failures into the PlayStation, while the other made poor quality Nintendo games for their system.
No.
With these two failures, Nintendo started to look elsewhere. As for now, they were done with disc gaming. The company needed to come up with something new and innovative. What they came up with was a little bit more than innovative. It was ahead of its time. Nintendo looked back to the late 80s with the Famicom Disk System's Disk Writer kiosks, and that's when it hit them. A satellite-operated add-on. They thought of a new software distribution system, one where users could download games over a satellite signal instead of traveling to an actual store. This would become the basic concept for the Satellaview. To create the Satellaview, Nintendo teamed up with ambient radio broadcaster St. GIGA, subsidiary of TV broadcaster WowWow. St. GIGA was formed in April of 1990 and broadcasted various material over its 5-channel radio stations, with the main programming being the Tighter Sound, which consisted of various ambient noises intermixed with jazz music. The Japanese economic recession of the 1990s had weakened the company substantially, and thus the game juggernaut bought around 20% of shares in the company to help keep it afloat. Together, they used the Broadcasting Satellite System, otherwise known as BS, that St. GIGA used their Tighter Sound services and created a broadcasting system that worked on BS 5-channel technology, which broadcast signals to the system over 5 channels as the name implies. The two started off with a good working relationship. However, over the coming years it would begin to falter badly. For now, however, the two are on good terms and over the next 2 years worked on the system. St. GIGA handled the radio stuff while Nintendo handled the rest of the add-on, including its hardware. During this time, Nintendo opened communication with Microsoft with the aim of bringing the Satellaview worldwide, with Hiroshi Yamauchi meeting with Bill Gates in person to discuss the potential worldwide release of the add-on. Unfortunately, it was never meant to be. Now, before we get into the release and post-release stuff for the console, a few words about the circumstances around the console's release. In April of 1995, the Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn had already been out since December and November of last year respectively, with Nintendo's Ultra 64 planned for a Christmas 1995 release. The Super Famicom had been out since November of 1990, and it was starting to show its age with the new blood around. Nintendo was playing with danger to put out such a daring product which one party was relying on to stay afloat. The day came. Satellaview systems were not seen on store shelves, if they even stocked on them in the first place. They were only available by mail order, and if you wanted one, you needed to fork out a flat $200 for the add-on itself, along with a small fortune for a BS tuner. And if you wanted St. GIGA's programming, you needed to pay a subscription fee. Despite the heavy costs, the service was premium. One feature unique to the Satellaview that had never been seen before was the Soundlink broadcasts. If you were playing a compatible game, you could listen to talk shows or music while playing your game. This wasn't BitCrush or the Super Famicom either. This went through a separate BS tuner which connected to your TV, so you had high quality audio being broadcasted to you. When it launched, the Satellaview didn't really do much, but it did slowly grow. By 1997, it reached its peak subscriber base of approximately 116,000 users. This was a moderate success, something which Nintendo refuses to acknowledge, but this could only go down from here. We're better to start with Nintendo's separation from St. GIGA. To say St. GIGA was a good company in good shape would be betraying the truth. Not only were they around 8 billion yen in debt, but St. GIGA broadcast Satellaview signals without a license via sketchy means. While the Satellaview helped keep the company afloat for some time, cracks were starting to show, and it was inevitable something would happen. Around March of 1998, the strain of St. GIGA could be felt in the offices of Nintendo. When they found out about the fact that St. GIGA didn't actually have a license for broadcasting, they were not pleased at all. It's also worth noting that Nintendo actually tried providing a debt management plan for the failing company, but they rejected it. Ultimately, because dissent brewing between the two companies, Nintendo basically said, "We're done." They broke off their partnership in March of 1999 and terminated development for all original games for the system, leaving St. Giga to do rebroadcasts by themselves. This meant that for the foreseeable future, St. Giga was alone. This move, in my opinion, is one of the things that doomed the faltering broadcaster. Regardless, St. Giga was now on borrowed time. They managed to prolong the Satellaview into the new millennium, although only by 6 months, as on June 30th, 2000, St. Giga ceased operations for the Satellaview due to their desire to return to their original programming. The system was deemed a failure by Nintendo, never to be revisited again. With this shutdown, the broadcast elements of the Satellaview would have been completely lost, were it not for a passionate group of hardworking individuals who continued the search for missing Satellaview games and programs. Their attempts at preservation should be noted by any big company or companies who want to develop a big online service, which will inevitably shut down. Nintendo has almost never revisited the Satellaview outside of Mario's promotional astronaut costume in a few games, and has essentially written off the add-on as a failure. However, not only is this a shallow analysis, it's incorrect too. Thanks to the system's sales, subscriptions, and Nintendo support, St. Giga was able to get through the Japanese recession for a good while, but unfortunately it too crumbled. As with all good things, St. Giga's end was inevitable. The company was on the edge of bankruptcy by 2001, and after some talks, was sold to YB Incorporated and rebranded to Club Cosmo on the 31st of March 2003. The company kept broadcasting content until October of that same year, when they started selling off assets, essentially liquidating the company. However, in 2006, World Independent Network Japan started rebroadcasting old St. Giga ambience tracks. The final ever broadcast of this material was on November 1st, 2006. Afterwards, broadcasts were suspended for maintenance, and were expected to restart in 2007. However, in November of 2007, WinJ had its broadcast certificate revoked by the Japanese Minister of Internal Affairs, putting the last nail in the coffin of St. Giga for good. The Satellaview, on paper, sounded like a really good concept, and in practice, it actually was that. It's a shame Nintendo refused to acknowledge it as such, but fortunately, we can. We've done our best to salvage what we can of it, and so far, we've done a pretty good job. It's just a shame that St. Giga is not around to bear witness to it. At least we can leave them to rest in the tide of sound. Thank you for watching. This is my first time doing such a thing and I want to see how people react. I'm not the best at editing audio or visual wise, so please excuse my roughness for now. With that being said, if this video gets enough traction, I'll cover one of two systems. The least successful yet most iconic of Nintendo's 3 generation spanning add-on phase, the Nintendo 64 disk drive, or the oldest and most well preserved of the 3, the Famicom disk system. But for now, this is where I get off. Ciao.